George. George, you're very welcome. You're not going to believe this, but I was going to wear that, you know. It's very smart indeed. Can you... do you want to discuss it?
Well, it's a homemade Boy George jacket, if you like. I just like to do things that kids can copy, you know. When we first started Culture Club, you know, I don't know if you ever saw, there were a lot of kids walking around with my hat and, you know, the same kind of hair. Because, you know, it's nice to be able to give kids something they can copy without costing them a fortune, and, you know.
Will this cost anything? There are a lot of hotel
No,
fees,
actually, safety pins, actually, you never see advertisements for safety pins, do you? Because, they, you know, everybody has to use them. So they're one of the most practical things you could possibly wear. And it looks very, you know, doesn't it?
I'm sure it does. Now, you're back in the charts after a year. Now, why did you take time off?
I think it becomes like a marathon. People get bored with you. If you notice now at the moment, everybody's picking on Madonna. I mean, she probably hasn't done a thing wrong. You know, she probably just hasn't said anything, but everyone's moaning. Because people just get bored of you. You're in the papers every day. You know, you're photographed coming off the plane, you know, going to the toilet, you know, everything. It just becomes boring, so you have to take a break, really.
But the pressure was also on you, as well as the...
Yeah, also, I think, you know, what happens is that you can ride the crest of a wave, and your music can suffer. The quality of your music can suffer because you keep churning out records. So it's good to take a little break and concentrate, and also decide whether you want to continue. You know, I mean, after what I went through, I had to decide whether I wanted to go and hibernate for the rest of eternity. You know, so we'll never do it again. But I obviously love what I'm doing, so here I am.
Did you miss it for that year?
I got so bored. You don't know what it's like for somebody like me to be told to sort of keep quiet, you know. You'll find out as we go along that I find it very hard to keep my mouth shut.
Keep quiet for a second. I want to... Now, Phil Collins was on the show a few weeks ago, and he was telling us about the part he played in Miami Vice, and you've been in the A-Team, is that right?
Yeah, it was awful. I mean, one thing I pride myself on is my honesty, and I am a terrible actor, so don't watch it.
Is it true you stormed off the set?
Oh, no, I don't do things like that. I don't have tantrums, no. No, what it was really, I mean, if I had to compare my acting to anyone, I'd compare it to the Laughing Policeman, you know. I mean, you know, to me, acting is like, you know, you're sort of tragic and you're throwing and crying and, you know, I mean, being myself is an acting, and also the A-Team. Sorry, I mean, no offence, but it's not really acting, is it?
Was it the director who stormed off the set, then?
I don't know. It's not really gone with the wind, you know.
So did you actually complete the episode or not?
Oh, I did, yeah, and I got paid lots of money for it, too.
Something for us to look forward to. You talked about you being cheap for the kids to copy what you do, but, I mean, is it expensive to be a trendsetter? You spend a huge amount on clothes?
Depends, really. I mean, depends what you define as fashion, really, as well, you know. I mean, I'll wear anything, as you can see. And, I mean, and I don't really care what people think, you know. I think that's really what fashion's about. My kind of fashion is just doing what you want. You know, if you want to go out with a pot on your head, do it, you know.
When you go home, you don't put on a cardi and slippers.
Yeah, I do, but it's a peculiar-looking cardi.
And 3 slippers, actually. Anyway, you did make a lot of money very quickly, didn't you? I mean, how have you handled it? Do you think you are irresponsible?
I would say that being wealthy is easier to handle than being poor. Wouldn't you agree? Everyone would agree. I mean, I certainly don't feel sorry for myself. It's something that you know, you learn to deal with and smile a lot about. I think it's nice to go without, though, because then you really do appreciate when you get money, you really appreciate it.
And you went without before?
No, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, you know, I had to walk across hot coals or anything like that. You know, I came from a pretty poorish family. We weren't rich, but it's nice to be able to sort of give my parents money now and, like, make them do things, go on holiday. You know, they're the nice things about being rich, you know.
Would you describe yourself as a romantic?
Yeah. I once saw this great T-shirt in New York which said, if you love somebody, let them go. If they don't come back, hunt them down and shoot them. So, I mean, I definitely am definitely believe in love. I do almost anything for love, even kill.
Well, let's hope we don't fall in love. How important is physical attraction to you?
I think it's important to everybody. I mean, people do lie, you know. Everybody says, oh, I love her for her brains. But basically, I think, obviously, you know, when you initially meet somebody, it is the main factor. You look at them and you decide whether you like what you see. But, I mean, you know, like, for instance, if you're married to somebody for 40 years and they get fat, you don't just divorce them because they get fat. So I think, you know, I mean, people do underestimate what is sexually attractive, you know. I mean, often you see, like, a beautiful girl with an ugly guy, and people say, why is she with him, vice versa. I mean, you know, that person may have something that you'll never have.
Money.
No, it may not be money. It could be something else. Let's not get rude here. You know, but basically, you know, I mean, there isn't any such thing as being perfect, you know.
Present company accepted. Are you in love at the moment?
With myself. No, yeah, I am. Yeah, definitely. But not with anyone in particular. With a lot of people.
People do conform eventually. I mean, even David Bowie has done that. Will you ever?
Poor thing. Waste of makeup. No, I really, that's like a neutralising question. It's like everybody says, are you going to get married? Because then they can all go and say, oh, he is really normal after all. Listen, he's just like the rest of us, you know, he does it for the money. You know, it's, I don't really want to be neutralised. You know, I am what I am. You know.
Do you want to have children?
I think it'd be a bit difficult, don't you? We do have a bit of time on our hands, a few years, but I don't think they'll have developed it by then. No, but I understand what you mean. I would like to have kiddies, yeah, I would love to. Oh, isn't that sweet?
Well, I remember Eamon Andrews once asked an Irish writer, Brendan Behan, he said, what would you like people to say about you in 50 years' time? And he said, I'd like them to say I just celebrated my 73rd birthday. And I wonder what you would like, what you think you might be doing in 40 years' time.
I hope I don't know what I'd like to be remembered for. Songs, mainly, you know. I mean, because I actually read something in the newspaper the other week which said, Boy George was nothing to the discovered mascara, which I felt very insulted because, you know, I write songs, and songs are wonderful. They take you back, they can bring back so many memories. And so that's what I'd like to be remembered for. Things like Do You Really Want to Hurt Me Time, good songs that give, you know, that give something to people and make people happy.
I can imagine, I mean, can I imagine what you would look like in 40 years' time? Are you going to be like that?
Hideous, probably. Well, I mean, everyone wants to grow up gracefully, but sometimes you just can't help it, you know.
Do you think this country is particularly supportive of people like you?
Oh, yeah. England's very, you know, we're definitely like a laboratory. We have all the best ideas, all the most exciting ideas. Unfortunately, what we do is we give them away to other countries. We don't capitalise on them, you know. But definitely we're a great country.
Well, we all agree with that. Hear, hear, we all say. I have more company to introduce in just a moment. George, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
My next guest was born in Tokyo. Her first name means ocean child. She is known to the world as Yoko Ono. Welcome back to England. Are the memories flooding back for you?
Oh, yes. I mean, it's so nice to be back, you know. I was very nervous about coming back, but the minute I landed at the airport, I started to remember all sorts of things, you know, and it's just very emotional for me.
You're on a world tour. Star Peace is
Yes.
the name of your show. And what inspired it?
Well, it's actually Sean. One day, we were just having dinner with friends, and they were all grown-ups, except Sean. And we were just talking about world affairs. And suddenly, he started saying, oh, the world is terrible, isn't it? It's so terrible, you know? And I just looked at him, and I said, oh, no, don't worry about it. I mean, it's not that bad, you know, and all that. And it really sounded so phony, what I was saying, you know? And I thought, well, he's right. It's so bad, and we're not doing anything about it. Well, I'm trying in a way, but it wasn't really going outright and doing things, you know? And after what happened in 1980, I, in fact, said it to the world. I said, well, look, enough is enough, you know? We did a lot, and look what happened. So now I'm going to just be a mother, and you just take care of it, you know? That's how It was.
What has the reaction been in the different countries you've visited to your show?
All very different and interesting.
They've been turning up in large numbers, have they?
Oh, yes, in Eastern Europe especially. Warsaw was very emotional, very emotional. And I think that because they can't come to us so much, so we should just reach our hands. And I hope after this, many people will just go there. If they're going to vacation in Europe, just not going to Rome and Paris, but go to Warsaw. It's beautiful, you know. We have this little fright about it. Oh, shall we go to Eastern European countries, you know? But people are so warm, very religious. I was going to attend a mass in the morning, you know, because they all go to mass in church, but I overslept. But anyway, and it was really great.
George, you were an infant when the Beatles happened, but have you been aware of the story of John and Yoko?
Very much so. Actually, one of my favourite, I can't say Beatles songs, is The Ballad of John and Yoko, which is one of my favourite songs.
Sweet.
And, you know, because it's about the sit-in, the peace sit-in. And actually, we were talking backstage, Yoko and I, and Yoko said that she liked the war song. One of the few people that
yes.
did.
You know what I did? I was so impressed with it. I sent him a telegram saying thank you, you know. But of course, he'd never received. Communication lost.
But it's nice because it's a, you know, a generation on in music, and yeah, you know, it's the same kind of sentiment, and you know, it's the peace sentiment. So.
So I was married to one of the most famous eccentric Englishmen, and you know, I do understand him, you know.
If George screams in agony, it's because one of those safety pins is open. Now, when you met John Lennon, he of course knew about you from your already established reputation as an artist. I mean, were you...
As an avant-garde artist, yes.
Yes. Were you a big Beatles fan?
No, actually, I was studying Sarah Lawrence, and in those days, on Saturday nights, a jazz band comes in, you know. So I wasn't really aware. I heard about Elvis Presley, and also I've heard about the Beatles as a social phenomenon. And I remember the name Ringo, because Ringo means apple in Japan. So it was very easy to remember. Of course, it has to do with my Japanese background, too. I just couldn't remember those other names. It was complicated. I mean, I didn't know, you know.
So what was your own reaction at that first meeting?
Well, first of all, nobody warned me that it was him, so I didn't know who he was. But I thought he was very sort of gentle and clean-cut, nice person, you know.
Those early stunts that you did, the public honeymoon, these things were in the name of peace. They were the bed-ins, and you writhed around in the bags. Now, whose idea was all that?
Well, let's say that it was our idea.
You would have enjoyed that, George, I think.
It was wonderful.
You should have been sitting in the bed with us. You know, and...
They'd have had some great stories then, wouldn't they? Now, everybody looks back, you know, at the 60s and says, oh, I wish I was around then. I mean, I'd love to have been around then.
You were labelled the woman who split up the Beatles. Were you?
Oh, well, that one. Of course not. I mean, they're very strong men, and you can't even try to do it, even if you wanted to, but I had no idea about it. The way I look at it is that they were getting very, very big. And actually, you know, just that side, that they're just big people, you know. But they were actually very good performance artists, and they loved performing. And when they had to stop performing because it was just getting too big, I think that they needed that inspiration again to go and perform. And I remember at one point, in fact, Paul actually said to the others, you know, why don't we, to get the inspiration again, to get the kick out of it, you know, why don't we go on the road again? Maybe we'll do clubs again. And of course, it sounded sort of very impractical at the time. And then he would say, oh, no, okay, well, we can't do that announced, but maybe we can do it unannounced. Just go to one club, suddenly appear and say, we're the Beatles, you know. And it was sad watching all that, you know, feeling that they couldn't do what they were enjoying all their lives.
And were you desolate yourself when the Beatles did split up?
Well, let's put it this way. What happened was John was with these three very interesting, exciting people, and now it was going to be me. And I had to fill the space of three people and more. The whole world that he had, he just burnt the bridge and came to me, you see. So sometimes it's quite heavy, the responsibility.
You've always seemed to be a woman of very strong character. Is this to do with your upbringing?
Maybe. I don't know. But I mean, you see, this, again, it's a myth, I guess, that the subservient nature of Japanese women or something like that. Because as far as I know, I mean, my mother was a very strong, my mother is a very strong person. My grandmother was a blue stocking, you know, one of those blue stocking ladies, society feminist, in the Victorian age, you know. She was one of those.
Well, as you say, it's not at all our idea of the traditional Japanese family setup, is it?
Well, all society, you know, I mean, you can't generalize. I mean, my view of English women, I mean, I respect them a lot in the sense that they're very strong. John was brought up by 4 aunties, and I never, well, he never stops talking about them, you know, and he had great respect for them, and they were all 4 very strong, intelligent, headstrong women.
When you and he split up, it was you who chucked him out, wasn't it?
Sort of. Well, I know I'm criticized for that, and also sometimes they say, well, it couldn't be. I mean, what are you talking about? You know, whatever. But yes, in fact, I had to, because the situation was that I think that we needed more inspiration, and somehow it was healthier for us to be separated at the time. In my case, the minute I got together with John, I lost an audience because I'm an artist, and it was very important for me to work in my artwork and keep on expressing myself and have an audience for it. And the minute I became Mrs. Lennon, that was over.
Your own work suffered.
Yes, and also the other side was the whole world was sort of wishing that we'd split, you know, and the whole world was saying, oh, she's got a hold on him, and what is she doing, you know, free him, you know. So part of me was sort of saying, okay, here, you know, here, take it, you know, that's the way I felt.
You can have him back. Yes.
Yeah, right, you know.
So how did you get back together?
I went to this concert. And it was a concert, Elton John's concert, and John was performing in it. And I wasn't going to go there, really. But this gallery owner who was giving me a show at the time said, oh, I want to go, please, please take me there, or something like that. I said, okay, well, I'll take you there. And so we went to the concert. And John came out in the end and sang a few songs. And there was an incredible applause, you know, this was in Madison Square Garden. And the whole house was shaking. But I saw something else. You see, in the days that we were together, people say that John, oh, well, you're such a strong woman, and, you know, John succumbed to things or whatever, and he was a weak character or something. No, he was an incredibly strong character. He was an incredibly strong man, you know? And when we did this one-to-one concert in Madison Square Garden, he comes off like this, you know, and really rocking. And if people applaud, he's not one of those people who just bow or something. He never think of bowing, you know. But in this Elton's concert, he was bowing when they were applauding, and he was bowing just 1 too many times, like maybe 3 or 4 times he was bowing. And I thought, oh, he must be feeling insecure. And I just saw the lonely John there up there, you know, on the stage. And he was never like that when he was with me. He was always very sort of almost macho, you know, the real John that we know. And I thought, well, when he's alone, is he like that? Did I do that to him? And I felt very guilty. And when I went to the backstage and I said, it was a great show, you know, and he was so pleased. And we looked at each other, and rest is history, you know.
You tried a long time to have a child. Were you both, you and John, desperate to have a child?
Oh, that's another thing. I was never desperate to have a child. I always thought that it was a terrible thing to do because it would just, you know, restrict me. But, well, nature, it so happens that I became pregnant, and I think I had 3 miscarriages or something. And John was very distraught, and he really felt that he wanted a child that was ours, you know. So I started to feel, well, you know, and of course having miscarriages, you feel like you're a failure, you know. So then you start to feel, oh, maybe we should do it, you know. But then when we came back, I really felt that it was like an atonement for me. I felt that I want to give him something that he wanted so much, you know.
Well, you were 42 when your son was born. He's a lovely boy, now 10. And what are his memories of his father?
I think that because they were together almost 24 hours a day, and they had an incredibly sort of close relationship. And this was the most cruelest thing that happened to Sean, or anybody for that matter. You know, if John was like an ordinary father who just goes to work and come home and say hello, or just give a kiss before you go to sleep or whatever, then it wouldn't have mattered so much. But they were very, very close, you know. And then suddenly, it's taken away from you. And so it's almost hard to discuss about that. And I know that he hasn't gotten over it. I haven't either. But it's something that is very difficult to come to terms with. And I don't know if we could ever do that, you know.
Would you ever contemplate remarriage?
Well, let's put it this way. I'm in a position where I have a child who's still very much admiring his father and missing him. And Julian is also my responsibility in some ways, I feel, you know. And Julian has 2 stepfathers, and he was saying that it was sort of a difficult experience for him, etc. And when he comes to see me and all that, and I can sort of freely see him, and it's a nice situation now, you see. And of course, I'm caring of John's relatives still, and I'm doing business with John's ex-partners. So if anybody wants to fit into that, you know.
Yes, quite a challenge.
Yes.
When you say his ex-partners, I mean, what is your relationship now with the other Beatles?
Well, well, they were John's ex-partners, and so I have all the respect for them. And I would not want to say anything that would harm them in public or whatever. But also, it's like a marriage, you know what I mean? We have Apple and McLean going for the past decade or so. And we are doing business together. So just like any marriage, it has ups and downs, and we sort of swear at each other once in a while, but, you know, being public figures or whatever, you all know about it. It's so embarrassing. But still, we must be doing something right for the marriage to go on like this.
Well, thank you for being with us tonight. Good luck with the rest of your tour, and don't go for just a moment. It's been fascinating talking to you, Yoko Ono. And after the break, John Cleese.
Everybody needs
My next and final guest describes himself unflatteringly as moving like a cross between a giraffe and a hovercraft. One-time rector of St. Andrews University, he passed his driving test at the age of 36. Add up all those clues and you get John Cleese. John, I've made it a point throughout this series of getting small to medium-sized men on this show. Tonight, both of you have ruined this entirely. Are you very self-conscious about your huge height?
Well, I regard it as normal, you see. That's the trouble. So when I meet someone of, what, 5'1"?
You flatter me as 4'11", actually. Thank you very much.
My mother's only 5'1", incidentally.
Ah.
And when I was about 13 years of age, if we walked down the street, because I was 6 foot tall by that point, people used to nudge each other as we went by.
Well, I think it's always that being tall or short is just a mental outlook, you know? Because I always think I'm very tall.
How tall are you?
Well, I'm very tall.
Excellent.
I think it affects how people perceive you. I think it must, because if I'm a movie director shooting George, and I want to make him look very impressive, I put the camera down there. And if I want to make him look unimpressive, I put the camera above him. You know,
Yes.
Standard, right? Cinema grammar.
They just pointed at me. It looks very unimpressive, I tell you. But does your height, forgive me harping on about this, but I'm going to, of course, does it affect what is known as body language? It must, I suppose.
I think I'm just awkward. I think I just move strangely. You said the giraffe and the hovercraft. I think the first time I ever saw myself, on television, which was in New Zealand in 1964. I couldn't believe it. You know, it's like when you first hear your voice on a tape recorder for the first time, you think that's not me. Because the bottom half of me moved around on this cushion of air, and the top half kind of waved. And I always moved like that as Basil Fawlty, and people said, gosh, doesn't he move funnily? And then in Clockwise, I tried not to, and I did anyway, so...
I mean, my other guests are sitting very demurely, the pair of them. Does this body language tell you anything?
Well, they're both rather open, aren't they?
Open?
I am, actually. So, I mean, oh, you're better now.
Thank you. Yes. You mentioned...
Yes, excuse me,
Sorry.
but, you know, both Joan and I were such incredible fans of Monty Python, you know. And I never thought that he was awkwardly tall. I mean, we were just watching it all the time in New York, if you must know.
Well, the others were a pretty healthy height, actually.
Oh, that's why.
That's really what it was, yeah. I mean, Graham 6'2", Eric 6 foot, and then the two small ones whose name I forget, they're about 5'8".
How tall do you have to be so you remember the name?
About 6'3".
Oh. Just call me Brian, then. There we are. Now, in Clockwise, which you mentioned, your new movie, there's a lot of you rushing around in it, and, as you say, there is a lot of you. Do you ever hurt yourself?
A great deal. As I get older, I hurt myself more. For the first day, I mean, it really wasn't very impressive. The first day, I banged my knee running around actually on camera. So then I had to get out of this 1100 for the next 4 days. And to try and put all the weight onto this knee so that it didn't hurt this was the obvious choice. After 4 days, I had 70 cc's of fluid on my right knee. So I had to do some running around on Hull Station. So I bound that up with an elastic bandage. And by 3 o'clock the next day, running around the station, I tore my left hamstring.
Well, I must say something about this, too, because I'm very disturbed that, you know, he mentioned the age. And I think age is also just a figment of our imagination, you know?
But, Yoko, it starts falling apart.
No.
My teeth fell out in a restaurant last week. 3 teeth fell out. I've had 2 hair transplants, and the transplanted hair is falling out. Well, now
Do you ever hurt other people, John?
A great deal. But, I'm sorry, I don't know why I said that.
Not emotionally, I mean... physically.
Oh, you mean physically?
Yes.
Oh, not so often.
Yes.
I did hurt dear Andrew Sachs, I'm afraid, once.
Only once?
Well, twice, if you insist. I had to hit him with a frying pan. I tried to catch him a glancing blow, and it wasn't a glancing blow. I apologized a great deal, but it did get a good laugh. Actually, it didn't get a good laugh to start with, because the whole studio audience went, and then they laughed.
Yeah. When they saw he was really hurt.
When they saw he was really hurt, yes.
You are, as we know, a specialist in manic characters. Has that type always been a favourite target of yours?
No, I like the bland, cruel ones. You know, the guys who sit in the city with pinstripe suits and make cruel decisions about widows and orphans. I enjoyed those.
Was your own family a model for any of this?
No, not really. No, it was relatively normal. I mean, that's by Western-super-Mare standards, where they're all fucking mad anyway.
What frustrates you, John?
I think bad service because of the video arts training films. I think when somebody gives me bad service in a restaurant, I think it annoys me. I don't take it so personally. I think, why don't they get it right? You know, all they have to do is to remember 3 orders. You know, they don't have to go into the kitchen and write a cello concerto or, you know, evolve a geometrical theorem. They just have to get the order right, and they can't do that. That I think, irritates me.
Yes, I remember you told me, while we were discussing the Basil character once, and I said there was a guy I was at school with who ran a hotel, and if anybody asked for an extra slice of toast, he'd call them a bastard. They are around, aren't they? George, what frustrates you?
Phones, when you call somebody and they're engaged. I hate that. I'm always calling the operator and begging them to sort of, like, you know, interrupt calls and things. I hate phones when they're engaged. That's one of the things that frustrates me.
Yes,
Hell of a lot.
I understand that.
And phone boxes.
Especially, yeah, in England, every phone box is busted. Actually, if you go to Japan, no telephone boxes are ever busted, ever. So actually, England is really, really renowned for that. You never make a call, you know, sort of an emergency, and the phone's busted. Someone stole all the money in the box.
I think it's to do with the fact that people in England think the phones don't work because they've been vandalised, and it isn't that. They've been vandalised because they don't work.
Do you think that the Americans are better at handling all these frustrations?
Oh, yes, they're much better, aren't they? Americans, if something isn't right, they call the guy over and they say, this isn't right, please do something about it. And they do it quite pleasantly, but they do it assertively. And the dear old English sit there, seething in fury, you know, until the person comes up and says, have you enjoyed your meal? And they say, very nice, deep. And they don't do anything about it, so they go out angry and never come back. I mean, it's a terrible way of handling it.
Yes, that's quite true. I know you don't speak for the Japanese, Yoko, and it's been a long time since you've lived there, but do the Japanese find the English figures of fun?
Oh, well, you know, what I really like about English is that they have an incredible tolerance for eccentricity, don't they? And so, well, in fact, the whole society is rather eccentric. But I mean, it's very nice that, you know, it's about time that we're sort of gentle and kind to each other and to ourselves, you know? And I think that in other countries, I feel that they're sort of trying too hard in a way. I like this sort of everything is falling apart, but gentle, you know? And when I come back here, I feel sort of relaxed about it. Oh, it's great, you know.
Let's get historical now. You and the Beatles emerged at the same time.
It's a certain difference in publicity.
Were you a fan?
Yes. I mean, I'm so ignorant on pop music, I'm almost embarrassed to be sitting here, but I think that they wrote the greatest tunes along with Tchaikovsky that I've ever heard. Oh. And I'm afraid I just love tunes.
Yoko said that she and John were fans of the Python series, and you're a Faulty Towers man, aren't you, George?
Definitely. So you have to lie down after one episode for about half an hour. It's so manic. You have to kind of take a break and sort of relax, you know.
Last week I was talking to Les Dawson about taboo subjects, and of course, as the world knows, Life of Brian was criticised for being in bad taste, capital letters. Do you draw the line these days at anything?
I think you do. People often ask me about a general rule, and all I can say is it's terribly hard to sense whether or not you can do a particular joke about something. I start from the attitude that you should try, and if it proves impossible, I mean, there was a Faulty Towers with the dead body, where we wanted to resolve it. Well, it was great, the dead body. That was wonderful. I just said to a great friend who worked at the Savoy Hotel, I said, what was the worst problem you had at the Savoy Hotel? And he said, getting the stiffs out. Absolutely true, but in that episode, we tried to have the guy who died have a twin brother, so that after Basil had put the body away, the twin walked in. Which would have been very funny, but there was no way of telling the twin brother about his twin's death in a comedy show. So we had, do you see what I mean?
Yes. It's very endearing the way it amuses you as well. I mean, did you used to watch and laugh? Do you still watch and laugh?
Yes, I've got to the point now that I can actually, because I've forgotten the jokes. I watched one the other day, and I'm afraid I laughed more than anyone else in the It was about a psychiatrist. But at the moment, on a film like Clockwise, you see, which I've seen 8 times in the last 3 months, I can now only see what's wrong with it and just sit there thinking, oh, why was I too relaxed there, and why did I look, you know, and you just see all the errors. But in 4 years' time, when I've forgotten it, I'll probably be able to go back and have a couple of giggles.
You once listed your hobbies as gluttony and sloth, but I'm sure you've had to rewrite that, haven't you?
No, not really. No. I'm happy with those. Are there others? I mean, you're not going to suggest collecting stamps. Washing your car. I don't.
You're not slothful, are you?
Very slothful, yes. I mean, not if I have to get up to work, but I should just go straight back to bed now and sleep till Tuesday week. Next appointment is 4:30.
Mad on food?
Mm-hmm. Well, it tastes so good, doesn't it? It tastes better than anything else.
What tastes best?
Best is lobster.
Ah.
Huh?
Well, lobster's all right. But, you know, he's lucky because he can...
It's the most wonderful taste in the world.
Oh, all right.
Did John try to introduce you to tripe and onions and other English delicacies?
Oh, yes. You know, the thing is, the first thing that happened was he was giving me lunch. And the first lunch he gave me was toast, beans on toast. And he got the beans out of can. And I was like, what is this? I mean, I couldn't believe people would just beans on toast as lunch, you know?
George, you've travelled the world now. What food do you enjoy?
Anything and everything. Anything, really. Chinese, Japanese food, anything.
Because one has no idea what shape you are anyway, so you can do what you like.
I think all food is good except Mexican food.
Wonderful shape.
Right? Have you ever eaten Mexican food?
Yeah, I love Mexican food, except all the noise they make when you're eating it.
I think it should be made illegal.
Mexican food?
Well, you get plates. You get a great plate, and it doesn't have anything on it except pools of different coloured things. You ask, what is that? This is in America. You ask, what's that? They say it's melted cheddar cheese. You know, this is Mexican food. And then what is this brown pile? And they say that's refried beans. Have you come across that?
Refried
Yes, they
beans.
didn't get them right the first time. I've never seen it. It's such awful food. And then they have avocado, and they do one thing with avocado, which is to... What's the word? I can't remember. I'm bored with this anyway.
Yes, let's talk about something. George is one of your fans, as we've established. Do you actually return the compliment?
Well, I'm so ignorant about pop music. My daughter, I said, who is this guy, George Boy? And she said, I'll play... She said, all right, Cynthia said, I'll play you something. I think you'll like it. And I have to say I did.
John, what are your main interests now?
Getting home to bed. No, what are my... I'm writing a script with a marvellous director called Charlie Crichton, and I'm writing a second book with Robin Skinner, and that's it.
Forever.
Forever and ever. Amen.
I've had a lovely evening. Thank you all very much. John Cleese. Yoko Ono. And Boy George. And thank you for your company as well. Until the next time, good night.